Ahí está.
El sonido.
Ahora, espera, y desde acá presentamos entonces.
Desde acá hay que presentar, exactamente.
Desde acá.
Sí, vos tenés presentación, Daniel. Bueno,
Sí.
entonces empieza poniendo la tuya.
¿Y dónde la busco? A ver.
En el escritorio.
¿Dónde está?
No. No sé, ¿por qué no te deja ponerla?
No sé. Compartir.
A ver en toda la pantalla. Clique acá. Qué raro. No, ya sé. Pones compartir, ya me acordé, yo uso el Zoom y ahora abrís la presentación y se muestra. Ahora vayamos al escritorio. Acá. Abrí la tuya, no sé cuál es.
Sí, ya no me acuerdo.
Esa es la mía.
Esa es la tuya.
Sí. Ahí está.
Ahí está.
Ahí, entonces ahí abrí y poné la presentación, modo presentación. Ahí abajo, acá. Minimiza si no, que se pone en presentación, lo ponemos en presentación. Ahí está, esta la copia. A ver. Ahí está, perfecto.
Yo la veo, ah, sí, yo la veo.
Ahí está. Vos la ves y yo la veo.
Listo.
Perfecto.
Ah, no, esta no.
Bueno.
Esperá porque esta es mi presentación, pero esa es para mañana.
Vamos a abrir la presentación.
Ah, ¿es la de mañana esa? Bueno, volvemos a abrir.
Esta introducción. A ver. ¿Por qué anda lento esto?
Y esta época. Ah, rapidísimo. Muy rápido.
¿Sí?
Ahí está en modo presentación. ¿Qué pasa? Allá se ve como se ve acá. O sea que los que van a estar conectados afuera lo van a ver así. No tienen que verlo así, porque van a ver las anotaciones. Entonces, configuración y es duplicar presentación.
Ah, ok.
Duplicamos presentación, entonces todos vemos lo mismo.
¿Cómo tengo que hacer? Porque pongo yo. Para esto, o vos tendrías que estar acá, porque esto va a ser con cada uno que
Yo estoy
presente.
transmitiendo a otro lado.
Ah, claro.
Sí, en otro lado.
Bueno.
También.
Pones ahí en la copita.
Ahí presentás, pero ¿qué pasa?
Sí.
Vos ya ves cómo se ve.
Sí.
Siempre te tenés que guiar por esa tecla,
Sí.
eso te muestra cómo se ve.
Entonces,
Configuración,
sí.
duplicar presentación.
Y ahí ya se ve en pantalla completa.
Ahí está.
Y ahí va pasando.
Vamos pasando. Si quieren pueden ocultarlo para que eso no moleste.
Bueno, cualquier cosa vos vas a estar en esa mesa, ¿no? Cualquier cosa te miro.
No, yo me voy
No,
a ir.
se va, se va.
Ah, ¿te vas? Ah, porque pensé que transmitías desde acá. Ah, pensé que transmitías desde acá. Ah. Ok. Pensé que vos transmitías desde ahí. Sí, sí. Igual, bueno.
Claro, llamada y yo sé que tengo que venir.
Bueno, dale, no pasa nada. Igual creo que vamos a estar bien.
Hacemos una presentación de cada uno.
Sí, queda.
A ver.
Falta igual la gente de. ¿Cuánta gente es de UK? ¿Cuántos vienen?
No, son ellos dos
Sí.
y nada más. Ya venía otra chica, pero no.
Pero no viene.
Y el resto son de acá,
Perfecto.
de distintos lugares.
Perfecto.
Esto se está transmitiendo ahora. Lo que vamos a hacer.
Estamos saliendo.
Puede ser que sí, estamos
Estamos hablando. ¿Se están escuchando?
No, ya está.
No tenés un live propio.
Vamos para acá. No, pero no estamos muteados. Vamos a salir acá.
You are the head.
Así, no hace tanto. Anda, jala.
Sí.
Bueno, ya está, estamos con el micrófono
¿Qué les digo?
abierto. Estamos con el micrófono abierto.
¿Qué les digo?
Nada, que como director, yo diría como director de la escuela, le da la bienvenida a este, te lo pongo acá para que sepas el workshop. Un minuto. Un minuto. Explicarme.
Este es el título.
Este es el
The second Argentina United Kingdom with Public Workshop, ¿incluye? Yes.
y el proyecto es el N8 Agri-Food. Este es el proyecto que da origen al workshop. El N8 Agri-Food, Sustainable Food Production, es
el proyecto.
El project que da origen a esto y este es el título de nuestro proyecto. Entre Lancaster y la FAUBA.
¿Y el primero dónde fue? Ah, bien. Ahí es cuando fueron los de... Ah, perdón. Para que me tome la cámara. Para que me tome la cámara. Ah, bien. Excuse me. Well, good morning to everyone. I'm the head of the graduate school of the university here. And Mirage told me that to make the presentation of the workshop. This is the second Argentina United Kingdom with Partnership workshop. The last one was at Lancaster. This is the workshop take part of the project Sustainable Food Production. And well, welcome to be here. And Mirage.
Thank you for coming. And very brief, I show some point of the objectives or related with the objective of the project. This is as Gustavo said, this is the title of the project, the increasing wheat yield and quality. The idea of this project was make a genetic approach and phenological, physiological, and genetic approach, exploring the variation of different genotypes of different countries, China, Argentina, UK, Serbia, that were shown in the in the Faculty of Agronomy, the School of Agronomy here a couple of years ago. And now the same genotypes were shown this season in Chivilcoy. We expect that visit during the field day next Wednesday at Chivilcoy, depending the rain. A storm is announced for Wednesday, unfortunately, and we'll see if we can go to the field on Wednesday. The partners of this project is Lancaster University, Durham University, the University of Buenos Aires, the School of Agronomy, and the KWS as a private company. The idea is explore different diverse germplasm, make the genotyping of the germplasm, and KWS make the sequence of the gene of the whole population. And the idea is match what happened with the phenotyping and the genotyping. And again, the idea is provide new molecular markers that can be used by breeders related with the yield potential and equality in this diverse population of the genotypes. from different countries. And this is the different person. Martin Parry was the director of the project, and include different scientific from Lancaster, and from Argentina is Santiago, and me as the counterpart of this project for Argentina, from Argentina. That's all. The schedule is briefly the schedule. The schedule, we had the oral presentations today, lunch, a break lunch. We continue during the afternoon, and when finished the oral presentation, we visit the experimental field and here at the faculty, and we have a dinner in this place in the downtown of Buenos Aires to see some tango spectacle and the dinner. This is the most attractive point of it. Right, okay. Today we continue earlier the oral presentation, and we follow this schedule. Sorry, this is wrong. And we, on Wednesday, depend the rain, we visit a field in Chivilcoy, which is little bit less than 200 kilometers away from Buenos Aires. All right, this is all, and we start with the first presentation with Sol. Could be interesting to make a brief presentation of each one. My name is Daniel Miralles. In English, Miralles. In Spanish, is Miralles. And okay.
Gustavo Maloni. I'm professor at the Vegetal Production Department, and I'm the head of the grade school.
I'm Alicia Dali, head of Operation and Bilateral Relations Department here.
Sam Taylor from the University of Lancaster, placing 2 names that we saw on the slide as a largely in terms of running this project.
I'm durante. I'm professor of crop production and the head of the undergraduate agronomy program.
I'm Gabriela Tranquilli, and researcher at the National Institute for Agriculture, and also professor in this school and in the university.
Good morning, I'm Miguel Taboada. I'm professor of social science in the faculty in the University of Buenos Aires.
Okay, Quesada, in the University of Buenos Aires, and professor of plant research.
Good morning, my name is Gabriela Veledo. I'm a professor and researcher at the Syrian unit in this
Jorge, I'm Marcelo Yarovsky, professor of plant physiology in the university.
Montserrado, I'm a professor here in the University of Buenos Aires in crop production.
Santiago Rentado, I'm professor at the University of Rosario in physics.
I'm Martin Holsford, I'm a professor of research in the UK, and I lead the research program.
I'm Nicole Pettini, and I'm a researcher at the research group of Interacademico.
I'm Diego Bartla. I'm also a professor of crop production here in the University.
Well, my name is Fernanda González. I am researcher of the National Institute of Agriculture and Technology and of the National Research Council. I am from Pergamino also. I'm professor of the University of Northwestern Pergamino.
I'm José Andrade. I also work here in the production area, and I'm also a researcher at the National Research Council, and I work in problem systems and with data analysis.
Okay.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure for me to be here. The idea was to have a brief introduction of the Argentinian and UK bilateral cooperation. I want this one to be the first slide. As you can see there, the advancing in education between Argentina and UK over the past 10 years. You have different blue balloons there with different topics and steps we've been going through over these 10 years, since 2013 till today. This been taken from the National Ministry of Education. We've been experiencing technological and cultural integration. We've been addressing cultural challenges. We've been dealing with and doing together joint conferences and educational events, well, and so on. But I wanted to show you this because, first of all, because I'm really proud of. We've been working over the past 10 years on these different topics, but also because we have different fundings from not just the National Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Science and Technology in Argentina, but also from the British Council. So that's something we've been working on over the past 10 years. But how do we get here? Where are you? Who we are? We are the School of Agriculture of the UBA. FAUBA is our acronym in Spanish, Facultad de Agronomía de la Universidad de Buenos Aires. We are inside, the University of Buenos Aires, which is a national and public university, which is autonomous, which is co-government and democratic. This means that students, professors, and alumni vote for the different deans at the different schools that the UBA has, and those deans choose the rector or the president of the university. It is free. This means that any student who would like to study here at the undergraduate level, they don't pay any fee, not even after finishing, after getting their degree. They don't pay at all. And we don't have an exam. We have a mandatory first year, but it's not an admittance exam. These are some of our numbers, of the university numbers, of course, not of the schools. We have more than 300,000 undergraduate students, which is a lot. We have more than 25,000 professors, 25,000 postgraduate students, 30,000 professors, more than 100 undergraduate careers, more than 500 postgraduate careers, 6 high schools, more than 7,000 researchers and 3,000 fellows, 70 research institutes, 13 faculties or schools, we are in one of those, and 6 hospitals. These are the numbers from the UBA. There you can see the different schools that the UBA has. We are located in the first one right now, but we cover a wide variety of different thematics and areas from the different schools. We are located in the central campus of the School of Agriculture of the UBA, but we also have a School of Gardening and Agriculture, 3 sites in Buenos Aires province where students and professors do some research and also 2 experimental fields. These are our numbers, which are quite smaller than the numbers of the UBA, but we are one of the smallest, not the smallest, but one of those of the School of the UBA. Regarding the numbers of students, we have 3,900 undergraduate students, 1,000 postgraduates, 700 professors, and 350 professional staff. I'm a professional staff. The people who work in the different offices to help the school. We also have 300 annual scientific publication, which is a lot. If you see the numbers of professors and fellows we have, 200 research projects, 60 extension projects, and 100 annual agreements. These are undergraduate courses. The courses that you see there on the undergraduate level are from 5 to 6 years courses. We also have a high school teaching diploma and technical courses, which are 3-year courses. As I told you before, we have a School of Gardening, so there you can learn about agriculture, organic vegetable production, gardening design, and rural tourism. So those are more like what we call technical degrees, more professional, not too academic. Regarding the postgraduate areas or courses, we are in the School for Postgraduate Studies here at FAUBA. We have a PhD in agriculture. Each school of the UBA has its own PhD. But the PhD and the master and some specializations depends from the rector's level. So it's the UBA, the ones that expand the degree. We have 8 masters, but one more international master with the University of Parma in food. We have 14 short programs. Those are programs for professionals, okay, and 18 specializations. Regarding the research, development, and extension, there is something really strong here at FAUBA. We are divided into 7 academic departments. We have departments and chairs, so it's like a mix. There you can see the different areas that our departments are divided into, such as applied biology and food, economy, agricultural engineering, qualitative methods, plant and animal production, and natural resources. But we also have 2 FAUBA CONICET research institutes. CONICET is our National Research Council, and we have 2 FAUBA CONICET institutes, such as FAUBA, which is more dedicated to physiology and ecology, and INBA, which deals with environmental biosciences and agriculture. FAUBA's internationalization has been growing a lot over the last years. The countries painted in green are the countries we work with in different manners, different ways. I don't know, just could be undergraduate exchange, postgraduate researchers, different bilateral projects, multilateral agreements, such as the ones that the European Union has with Horizon 2020 or Horizon Europe. So we work with all, and of course, UK is not the exception. These are some professors that have been working, and professors and researchers that have been working with UK, with different institutions in UK over the past 10 years, past 5 years. Of course, you can see there Daniel in Lancaster, but we have, as you can see there, we also have some different universities we work with research institutions, companies, and so on. And these are our partners, not just FAUBA's partners, but also UBA's, UVA's. Of course, it's Lancaster, but we also work with Queen's University at Belfast, with University of Leeds, and Sheffield. But I wanted to be more specific with the Embassy of Argentina in the UK and the United Kingdom Embassy in Argentina. We've been, they have been supporting us over these years a lot. So we're really thankful, and it's something we are really proud. These are some opportunities and fellowships we will be working tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. in the brainstorming session. So I won't make a big stop here, but just to give you an idea, we have 15 different fellowships that we can work on tomorrow. Some of them are from the UK government, from the British Academy, from the Royal Society, from, I don't know, Ministry of Education, British Council, also from the UVA. We have some. So we will be working on this tomorrow specifically, but just wanted to give you an idea that we will have a good brainstorming session tomorrow. These are, this is FAUBA's social, International Affairs Office social media, and that's my personal email address. Well, some you already have it, but and thank you so very much.
I don't know if there are some questions for Sol, or tomorrow we have a special break, a special time, period of time to discuss the different alternatives to make.
Yeah, we have 15, so we work on those tomorrow. Yeah.
Glad to see that list.
Yeah.
You know the research.
We have a list. We will be working on each of them tomorrow. I don't want you to steal a lot of time today.
Okay. Yes, follow with the same.
¿Está funcionando esta?
No lo sé yo, pero no sé quién puede competir.
No, lo que hay que hacer es eso.
Tiene el pituto ya.
Espera. Está muteado. Está muteado. Mira. ¿Ves que está negro, rojo? Ah, no.
No, funciona. ¿Está conectado Gustavo o alguien?
Pero allá está muteado. Bueno, no sé.
Sí, porque debe estar conectado con esa compu también y se mutearon allá.
Espera, vamos acá. Espera. ¿Cuál era la tuya?
Está abierto.
Ah, bien. Nacer los hijos. Mandar acá. Y acá. Bueno, acá le pones duplicar. Esto.
Ok, no pasa diapositivas, pero apunta.
¿No?
Tampoco apunta. No importa. Apunta bien en el piso, pero a la tele no le alcanza. No importa. Cambiarle de... No importa. Okay, let's move on. Well, today I'm Jose Andrade. I already presented myself, so I'm not going to do that again. But today, Daniel asked me to introduce a little bit about agriculture in Argentina with focus on wheat, but I have to say that I work in cropping systems and crop rotation, so I'm going to talk a little bit about all the crops that we have here as extensive crops, but also a little bit about wheat. Probably the first question you have if you don't know nothing about Argentina is where are the Argentinian croplands? So probably that's an important information you have to know. But you have to know that they are not in the borderline. In the borderline, we have waterfalls. That's the largest waterfall in the world. Take notes. Probably this is going to be the most valuable information I'm going to give today for you if you're going to stay longer here.
I'm going to stay there.
Oh, okay, so you know it. Okay, that's in the northeast. In the northwest, we have beautiful colored mountains too that you can visit. In the west part, in Cuyo region, you can go and have some very fine Malbecs if you like wine. In the Patagonia, we have very beautiful lakes and mountains. And a little bit down the south, we have one of the most beautiful glaciers in the world that you can also visit. But still, not a clue of where is the cropland yet. And there you have the southernmost city in the world, that is Ushuaia, and also that's the lighthouse, the southernmost lighthouse in the world. And here we are in Buenos Aires city. This is a photo that I took in my birthday last year from the Congress here in Buenos Aires. And sometimes in Buenos Aires we also have the chance to go out the streets and celebrate some things. That's one. That's two, and that's three. It doesn't happen every time, but every 4 years we have the expectations to go out again and celebrate. But here in croplands, we have the Pampas area in Buenos Aires province and in Córdoba, Santa Fe, Entre Rios, a little bit in La Pampa. But then we also have two more regions in the north. We have the northeast and the northwest, where we don't have too much wheat, because the winter is a little bit dry. So, but overall, those are the most important area. And that's a beautiful wheat crop that we visited with our students a couple of years ago, when we still have some rainfall to grow crops. So now probably you know that we have experienced like 3 years in a row with rainfalls under the average. So crops are experiencing a lot of drought lately. So if we look a little bit more deep into the cropping area, this is the central area where we have the largest area of cropping systems. Here is the south of the Buenos Aires provinces, and here we have Entre Rios, Santa Fe, Córdoba, and this is the northeast and northwest area where this is very little wheat, but you will find more wheat in this part over here. And probably you will be thinking what defines the probability of having crop in a given area. This is the rainfalls that occurs in average in Argentina between spring and summer season. And you will see that, I'm going to go back once, you can see that the line of 500 millimeters during the spring and summer kind of define the possibility of having extensive crop, because in Argentina we have rain-fed system. We don't have too much irrigation in Argentina. We have some, but it's very little. It's below 5%. Also, you can see there is a very important gradient in temperature. Here you can see the growing degree days increasing from south to north, and also the days without frost increasing from south to north. But let's have a historical perspective. This is just a picture of today's cropland. But in the very beginning in Argentina, everything was grasslands, natural grasslands. But at some point, around 1900, we imported British cattle. So the new genetics demanded more valuable food. So we had to implant pastures. And to implant it, in order to plant the pastures, we had to rotate them with some grain crops like wheat and maize. So that's why this is the first increase in annual crops area in Argentina. But then, during a very long time, almost 80 years, you can see that the harvest area in Argentina oscillated between 10, 12, up to 15, 17 million hectares, and no more than that. And at some point, during that period, you can see that almost 90% or 80% of the cropping area was grown with maize or wheat. That is a cereal-based crop rotation. But at some point in 1975, we imported soybean from the United States. And that was to have it as a source of protein for the animals, because the other sources were scarce and were getting higher prices. So we imported soybean and started growing soybean. But the expansion of soybean was very low at the beginning. And by the mid-90s, you can see that soybean started increasing a little bit. You can see there at least 5 million hectares of soybean, 2 or 3 for maize, and 3 or 4 million hectares for wheat. So that was a quite balanced rotation between cereals and oil crop seeds. But then something happened. This is Argentina 1996. Sounds like a movie title, but it's a year that was a landmark in Argentina cropping system history. From that year on, the transgenic soybean resistant to glyphosate was released to market. And you can see that only 5 years later, it was planted in the entire soybean area. Soybean resistance to glyphosate was planted in 100% of soybean fields 5 years after its release. For maize, it was similar, although a little bit low at a lower pace, but eventually arrived to 100% of the cropping area. And altogether with that, this possibilitated the adoption of no-tilling system, because we had a soybean that was resistant to glyphosate, and we could develop the no-till system. And of course, this was accompanied by an increased use of herbicides in our cropping fields. So this was a change in the paradigm of how we produce crops here in Argentina. From there on, we have like 20 years using soybean resistant to glyphosate, no-tilling, and glyphosate. And that was the main cropping system for 20 years. And now we're trying to do things a little bit better than that. But as you can see here, look at that. After 1966, look at the proportion that soybean took on our cropping area. This is almost 60% of total area. We have a couple million hectares dedicated to sunflower, and then we have 5 to 6, 5 to 7 for maize, and another 5 to 7 for wheat, and that changes in the last couple of years. It increased a little bit. We're going to talk about that later. But you can see that not only soybean proportion increased, but also the total harvest area in Argentina increased at a rate of 600,000 hectares a year. So that it means expansion towards pasture lands, especially. And of course, what that means that cattle now is producing feedlots. So we have the feedlots to feed the animals, and then we free up land for soybean production and other crops, of course. But let's have a look on the more recent changes in Argentina. This is the harvested area for wheat, maize, and soybean, and the production. You will see also the ISO lines here that indicate a stable yield. So you can see how we increase harvest area. For example, in maize, we went from 2 to 8 million hectares, and also increased the average yield from 6 to 8, almost 8 tons per hectare. And that means an increment in national production going from 20 million tons up to almost 60 million tons in 20 years only. But of course, maize is not the only crop. You can see that as we increase maize area, soybean area decreased a little bit after 2014. You can see here that the total area is kind of stable between 16 and 19 million hectares, but in the last 6 or 7 years, soybean decreased a little bit in order to allow maize to expand a little bit. And in the case of wheat, we have a reduction in area between 2002 and 2014, and then an increment to 2020. And the yields also, you can see here, the average yield was 2.3, 2.4, and now is a little bit above 3 tons per hectare. Another important thing is that if we consider the entire system, the harvest area increased from 25 to 33 million hectares, and the total production of these 3 crops moved from 65 to 125 million tons. Sorry, I have a phone call now. And this is a typical crop rotation that we have. So these 3 crops share the land in time. So we have 1 year with maize, then typically it is followed by soybean, and then in the 3rd year we have wheat followed by a double crop soybean. This is a soybean plant later than the optimal planting date, and will be probably have a shorter cycle, and its yield is going to be lower than this soybean. But still, we have 2 crops in 1 season, and something that allowed for this was the no-till system, because we were allowed to plant the soybean right after the wheat harvest. You could do it in the same very day if you have the moisture in the topsoil. Before no-tilling system, you had to wait, and it will be delayed like 2 weeks to plant the second soybean. And planting day delays is a main driver for yield losses in double crops, in soybean double crops. So a question is how much the yields can increase in Argentina. So this is a yield gap analysis that we ran this year, and we did this for all the major crops in Argentina. For example, in average, we found that the potential yield in rain-fed fields for Argentina in maize is about 14.5 tons per hectare, but the average farmer yield is 7.5. This is about 50% of the yield potential. In the case of wheat, it's a very similar figure. We have 6.4 tons per hectare as a yield potential in average across 30 years, across 32 locations. You can see here that we don't have wheat in this part over here because it's a very dry winter. And here we only have the wheat when the year is expected to have some good rains. And the average farmer yield is 3.3 around. So that means, again, we have an actual yield that represents 50% of the yield potential for wheat as well. And you can see that we did that for 32 locations, and inside each location there are different soil types, and we address a lot of variation inside each site. And for soybean, the same. We determine a 5.1 tons as a yield potential, and the average farmer is around 3.2. This is for the full season soybean only, the single soybean, not considering the second one. And the actual farmer yield is about 60–65% of the yield potential in this case. So I do not say that we should close the yield gap fully. I don't say that the farmers had to target to achieve 100% of the yield potential, because that's not economically or environmentally sound. Probably we should target, as many researchers agree, to target to 75 or 80% of the yield potential as a way to, as a realistic goal to achieve. So if we do that, if we arrive to 80% of the yield potential, that means that national wheat production could jump from 18 million tons a year up to almost 30 million tons a year. And in the case of maize, it could go from 55 million tons up to 80. And in the case of soybean, could go from 50 million tons a year up to 60 million tons a year. So closing the yield gap, to 80% of rainfall yield potential would increase national production from 125 million tons up to more than 170. So we have margin to keep increasing national production in Argentina. And this is in current cropland with no area expansion. But there is another factor to mention, and that is crop intensity. I mentioned the wheat soybean double crop, which is one of the main systems that we use in Argentina. And here you can see how the cropland area increased over the last 12 years. That was as a pace of 400,000 hectares a year. But if you look at the harvested area, the slope is higher. That means that double cropping is being adopted more and more. That means that we are harvesting more times per year. That we're moving. In average, we have 1.2 harvest per year per unit of land. So a 20% of intensification, you could say. And again, this is the most typical rotation, but not every farmer uses it. Some farmers do more, only rotate maize and soybeans. Some farmers have larger proportion of soybean in the rotation, especially 10 years ago. Now it's more balanced. Some farmers are including double cropping, but not only with wheat, but also with barley, with canola, with field pea, and also with maize as a second crop. So this is not the only option for double cropping in Argentina. And this is how double cropping works compared to a full season soybean. That's the solar radiation incident in Argentina, and this is the full season soybean, the single soybean, solar radiation interception. And when we do double cropping, we have the wheat first, and then the second soybean a little bit later. But overall, what happened is that wheat plus soybean, plus the second season soybean, have more resources captured compared to a full soybean and have a larger productivity. And not only higher productivity, but also higher profit. So for that reason, one of my research projects are trying to understand the influence of crop rotations on soil conditions and successive crops. Because double cropping not only allows you to produce more, but there are some more benefits regarding the soil conditions in the mid and long term, and also, of course, how they impact on the successive crops in the future. So that's why we compare 3 rotations. This is the typical rotation that I mentioned in the slides before. This is wheat, soybean double crop, followed by maize, followed by soybean, and then again, this is 6 year. And then we compare that with a soybean monoculture. This is not rotation, it's a sequence of 6 soybean crops. And then a more intensified rotations with 2 double crops and a single crop in the last year, 2 times. So this is 1 crop per year, this is 4 crops in 3 years, and this is 5 crops in 3 years. So increasing the crop intensity. And this is how it looks when you see the solar radiation interception at the cropping system level, considering 3 years period. Here you have for one side, another side, and this is 4 sides. And you have one soybean, another soybean the following year, and another soybean. But when you go to see how typical rotation intercepts radiation, you can see 4 pulses intercepting radiation, and this is a more intensified crop rotation with 5 crops in 3 years. And here you can see how this is the proportion of total solar radiation that is being intercepted by crops in each case. And this is 32% for soybean monoculture, 36% for the typical rotation with wheat and maize, and 40% when you include another double crop in the sequence. So we are increasing resource capture. And with that increment in the resource capture, we increase the total production of our systems. But that's not the only thing that we are benefit from after increasing cropping intensity. There are also changes in the soil conditions in the mid and long term. And this is, again, for 4 sites, 4 different sites in the central area of crop production in Argentina. And if you follow let's go to see the more different one. If you follow the red line, here you can see that the stubble amount on the soil surface is very low compared to the other 2 rotations that have maize and wheat, of course. And the soil organic carbon after 6 years is much lower, light carbon in the soil, of course, as well. Porosity, infiltration rate of water, and soil stability also is lower. And you can see that happens in the other sides too. The green and the blue lines are more outside, the red one in almost all sides, especially here, here, and here too. If you follow the changes in soil organic carbon through 6 years, we have an intermediate measure here, as in the 4th year. You can see that 6 years of soybean monoculture led to a decrease in soil organic carbon stocks in the soil. This is only the topsoil. I know we should measure that down deep, but this is a measure. We are targeting to measure that until 60 centimeters now. But it's a very nice dynamic, or not very nice, this is the opposite of nice, but you can see the trend here. But with the typical and intensified rotation, you can see the opposite. At least you stabilize soil organic carbon, or even in one side here, you can increase it a little bit, at least partially. And of course, that affects how the following crops we produce. And this is the case of a soybean crop that was planted in those plots after having diversions in cropping system. So if you have 6 years of soybean monoculture, then your soybean number 6 will yield less than the soybean plant after maize and rotation with maize and wheat, as you can see here, and even more if you intensify more the rotation. And we found that in 3 sites here, the difference were not significant, but in 3 sites there was an important change. And the yield response was between 400 kilograms up to 700 kilograms in soybean, which is a large increment if you think in proportion. It's more than 10% of yield response. I know. Okay, final thoughts. So in recent decades, cropland has expanded over pasture lands, and the crop rotation has shifted from being dominated by cereals to soybean crops now. Now 50% of soybean of total cropland is planted with soybean. Of course, some of that is soybean after wheat, so it's not that terrible. So there is a part of that 50% that has wheat before. There is potential to keep increasing national production, about 40%, going from 120 tons up to 175. If we close the yield gaps, this is with crop management, especially fertilization, that in Argentina we have negative nutrient balances. There is room to further intensify crop sequences via bubble cropping, so that can increase the harvest area. Soybean dominance in crop sequences has affected system sustainability by modifying soil conditions and penalizing successive crop yields. And one final message is that benefit from crop rotation, intensification, and diversification may or may not be captured immediately, but will persist for many years in time. So something that I didn't say, after that soybean in my last slide, where we found that the crops were better, they intercept more radiation, they were able to capture more water. If you stay in the field for a couple of years, you still see the benefits in maize, in wheat, and in any other crop that you plant after maybe 2, 3, or even 4 years. You can still see differences in crop performances once you have changed your crop rotation in the past. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. If you have any questions.
Jose, you show that the gap in soybean lower than the other crops, especially in the southeast.
Yes.
This is for the lower yield potential.
Yeah, the yield potential decreased a lot, and the farmer yield do not decrease as much as the yield potential, and that's because the shorter growing season that it has, and you had to, to use shorter maturity groups.
And the model?
And the model
that you use for these simulations is...
Which is, you asked me if it worked fine or which model I use. Okay, yes, it has some limitation. We had to tweak a little bit the crop row there for soybean because it was penalizing a little bit too much the soybean crops. In high latitude in the south, yeah. Because of, let me remember. Yes, Yes, now I remember. The grain filling period was the one that was affected the most in the south. If you anticipate the planting date, you have a response in the model. Especially we saw that in the double crop soil after the wheat. So we had to pay special attention to that, because if you simulate like 25 of December of planting date, then the yield was going to be below 1.5 tons. So you need to pay attention to that, and do not plant very late using the model, you know.
Because if you look in this part of the area, the gap is 10%.
Yeah, it's very low. Yeah, but that's that problem with the model for sure.
So. What about the wheat? Because it seems very high, 6.4 tons
as an average.
It's really high.
Mm-hmm.
The model works.
Yeah, of course. The model doesn't represent the reality. It's an approach. It was an intermediate loan. We didn't target to use a specific cultivar, just a generic one. Yeah, and of course, yeah, the models. The problem is that when you try to correct one thing in the model, then you move everything else in other sides. So we try to use general coefficient, trying not to touch much. The problem is that when you try to cover a very large area as the Argentina area, and you do not target for a specific site, you have problem with the model, of course. Then you will see that it's not working very well there, and it worked very well here.
Yeah. Jose, probably have you tested your simulation with actual grain mills?
Yes.
Of the top farmers and location? Yeah, the goal is always to calibrate the models with experiments that were performed in order to achieve yield potential. Mm-hmm. So there you have a realistic evaluation of the model if you are simulating the yield potential. But then, of course, there are other situations when water starts to scarce, then the model starts behaving in ways that are not very well predicted. So, yeah. Exactly, and you, of course, the model doesn't account for heat stress, for example, very well. Night temperature for night temperature for soil, I don't know. But another example is that frost damage or frost effects in grass is not well captured. So all the wheat yields in the west, close to the west of Buenos Aires, also are a little bit above what you can expect, because the model doesn't account for that either.
So the data you presented on the yield gap, was that based on actual yields in the recent years?
Yes. Yeah, for the simulations in yield potential, we use 30 years, but for the actual farmer yields, we only use the last 7 years to avoid any change in technological management. Genetics or fertilization or any change in planting date or whatever.
So what's the main contributor to the yield gap? What's the main contributing factor?
Oh, well, that's probably a good question. I don't know if I didn't check, but probably Fernanda can answer that better than me. But there is a fertilization gap, of course. Yeah, that will be probably the top one. Fertilization, yeah, fertilizer.
Because for us, the nitrogen is very expensive, so
it's not climatic.
No, the yield potential will be the climatic limit. An approach to that, it will be around 6 tons per hectare, and now we're producing 3.3. Probably we could try to arrive at close to 5. Could be. I don't know if that's realistic. You tell me. But yeah, we have problems with fertilization because it's very expensive. So farmers try to optimize the economic return rather than the productive return.
So what's the main economic driver for the increase in soybean?
The increase in soybean was the grain price in 2006 or 5. It was, I don't remember, but it was like 600 or close to $600 from 2005, which is more than now. And the low cost, yeah.
The low cost of implantation.
The low cost is it is half of that from maize, because maize is hybrid and soybean is a cultivar, and many farmers by that time, but in 20 years ago, they keep the seeds. Now there are some.
Or maybe fertilizer.
Of course, fertilization is not needed for nitrogen, so it's cheaper. We export almost all the soybean in different, not only as a seed, but also as a pellet to China, Thailand, Vietnam. And the wheat is for local consumption and for Brazil, and that's it.
Probably in 1996, the main driver was, I think, cheaper herbicides.
Of course.
The higher price of soybean was in the 20th century.
That's right. Yes, you're right. Yes, the main driver was the introduction of the soybean resistant to glyphosate.
The combo with the farming. In accordance with his question, which is the main factor do you think that is playing a key role in decreasing crop yields in wheat, soybean, and maize? Because I remember, is the model, simulation model, capture a poor topsoil condition, poor topsoil structure? I know different works from Intel Riveros. I forgot the authors now, but they measure, they characterize the road day by a poor topsoil condition, distinguishing rainy periods from not drought, but the periods with less rain. With less rain, the soil condition plays a key role because of water absorption. And so, can you capture this in your simulation?
Probably not. The model only is a daily simulation. That every day the model goes and read what is the situation. You can play with some things in the model when you work in sequence mode. That is when the amount of crop residues that you left on the topsoil, but not under the crop residue. You cannot modify it.
But in the simulation, you use the typical soil of each location without any degradation.
No degradation at all.
Remember our thesis with Jorgelina told that the north of Buenos Aires, the water is there, but maybe it can take it. So soil degradation reduce root relation and the capacity to take water.
Yeah.
A comment is some of the genotypes used in the model, I assume that you use the DSAT model, are quite old. It is necessary to reconstruct the coefficients with the cultivars. Especially, for example, in wheat, you probably use BioDX, which is
no, we use a genetic one, like an intermediate long one.
But the intermediate long is BioDX. This is the cultivar that was used to calibrate the DSAT in the past and continue with the coefficient.
Yeah, but there was a couple of tweaks made by Mercado and Monzon last year. But you know,
will increase.
Yes.
Probably.
But that was made. It's not old. It's not baguette 10. There was a couple of tweaks made by these guys.
My point is that you cannot use the same cultivar in the north and then in the south, because in this case, the intermediate long cultivar is suitable for the south, but it's not suitable for the north.
It was, I'm not gonna lie. I was
and the restriction in the north is the water, not nutrition. The problem is the water. But, and did you explore the north of Patagonia?
No.
But they are simulating the water limit.
Yeah.
Is it? Sorry.
It's the water limit.
It is water limit. Thank you. I didn't catch it. But we didn't simulate all the sites in the north. Anyway, in the northwest, we didn't simulate any.
Because in the south of the province of Buenos Aires and in the north of Patagonia, the potential is close to 10 tons.
But it's in the south.
Yeah, they need irrigation.
In the south, no. In the north, yes, but in the south, no. Yeah. In the
How
coast,
many hectares do you have in North Carolina? Or you have to take the average?
For example, in the coast, like Necochea or
Okay.
this part,
Necochea is the
yes,
best
it's
place.
quite different. What it means is the potential.
Parece los pampeanos, los pampeanos.
If it rains, you can take them to Necochea.
Okay, I have almost 8.2 in Necochea. 8.2. Yeah. And this is an average of 30 years, so you have years above 9 and.
Okay, but for me, you have to rethink in the new practice.
Okay.
Yes, but spaghetti is, in terms of yield potential, it's a good country.
Yeah.
Don't make me show the coefficients, please. I don't have the coefficients.
Spaghetti is, in terms of yield potential, it's very good.
But probably slower respect to the newest cut.
In terms of disease resistance, of course, but in
No,
terms
no.
of yield potential, which one is it? How much?
No, depending on the diseases.
300 kilos.
Probably go. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you for your interest.
Bueno, perfecto.
Vamos bien, vamos bien. A ver, Miguel, ¿cuál es?
No, yo la cargué acá.
Ah, sí, vos la tenés acá.
Como quieras.
No, no, está 10 puntos.
Porque tienes algún problema.
Lo resolvemos afuera.
Vamos, afuera.
Mirá que está el micrófono abierto.
Cierto.
Muy bien, muy bien, muy bien.
Glasses, please. Okay, good morning. Good morning to you and good afternoon overseas, I suppose. My main talk is another perfectly different that of Jose. I will talk to you about climate change adaptation in the agricultural sector, but of South America.
Bien.
Not only, sorry.
In the camera, yeah.
Ah, okay.
You can just stand there to take you in the
Okay, I can
and
see.
also to see your presentation.
Thank you. From South America, and to describe their risks, vulnerabilities, and opportunities. This is the main topic of my presentation. I will talk about the types of agriculture and conflicts in South America, which were climate change and extreme events, mainly downloaded from the last IPCC study, the 6th IPCC assessment. The main risks and vulnerabilities imposed by climate change on agriculture and farmers, which are the main adaptation options to climate change, and to think and describe probably future scenarios. Typically in accordance, very closely linked to the recent presentation of Jose, I think. One characteristic of our continent, South America, is the high diversity of climates, landforms, vegetation, and landscapes. It's more close than only Argentina. And many of the ancient native peoples that, unlike other continents, typically Europe and Asia, our agriculture, and similar that occur in Australia and Oceania, our agriculture is new, is from the 19th century. Previous to this, there are also agriculture, and many of the ancient native peoples were sedentary and did agriculture, often with surprisingly advanced techniques, such as the Aztec and Mayan, not in South America, in Central America, of course, and the Inca culture. The Inca culture was a very, very strong and important culture in the Peruvian Andes that have a very strong influence in our Northwest. However, it was not until the arrival of the European migratory continents at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century that extensive agriculture began to be developed. Recently, Jose talked to you about this by the importation of cattle livestock from Britain and the improvement of our pastures and the needs of food for our livestock. But our agriculture started with livestock and not with crops. Until the year 1990, I suppose, we imported wheat from Canada. Por favor, los trigueros me lo corrigen. This caused dramatic changes in land cover, and because of deforestation in the north, the disappearance of many thousand hectares in the Chaco area, and the plugging of grassland soils in the Pampas. We have not to confound. In the Pampas, they are one woodland or forest, only grasslands. Extensive livestock production and cattle grazing and native grassland and refined pasture was the main initial land use change. We can see a map of South America with the different areas. We can see the Orinoco area in the north, and the Amazonia. The Amazonia is one of the main rainforests in the world, together with the Guiana area, the Cerrado area, Mato Grosso in Brazil, and the west, all the Andes area, the northern Andes, the central Andes, and we share with Chile the Patagonian Andes. And the south we have the Chaco area and the Pampas that are combined in the Chaco Pampas area with similar kind of soils, sinty soils, composed by lowest transported marine materials that in the case of the Chaco area were changed by different other processes like land flows and so on. So the Campos area, the Mata Atlantica in Brazil. So this great area, hill area, covers about almost 18 square kilometers, million kilometers, covering different climates and landscape. We have more than 400 million inhabitants in 2016, and from those, 133 million are rural, outside of the urban centers. And there are very, very great difference about the countries. Argentina and Uruguay are characterized by having very low rural population. And unlike Argentina and Uruguay, other countries like Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, Guyana, and Central America, outside of South America, have high rural population above 30%, and Argentina and Uruguay below 10%, in Argentina 8%. So we have very, very low amount of people living in the field, typically in the Pampas area. And like this, the main amount of living people is in the north, in the Chaco area. So, which are the climate change extreme events? We can see this is what happened in the last years. In general, mean temperature have very light. This is a transportation of the last IPCC assessment, and mean temperatures is a manifestation of global warming, increased with a very likely probability in the all sub-region of the continent, absolutely all sub-region, and we continue, this trend will continue to increase at rates greater than the global average with high confidence. Another global trend is that mean precipitation is projected to change but not the same trend in all the continent. Main precipitation is likely to increase in the northwest and the south, and is likely also to increase in our region, in the southeast, in the south. But mean precipitation not only decreases, but is projected to decrease typically in northeastern Brazil and in the Pacific, in the Andes area. Now, for example, Chile, Peru, and in part Ecuador are suffering important consequences of the lack of rains and severe droughts that cause that farmers abandon different farms. So in this case, we can see which is the main frequency of extremes in the area. In general, we can see that at the bottom, I can read with you. Mean temperatures are increasing, and we have extreme heat waves, very important heat waves. This is a main factor. Another, in violet color, we can see where these extremes are occurring in the Central America, in northwestern and southwestern Andes, in South America. This is our area. In the southeast of the continent, in northeastern Brazil and the Amazonian area. In general terms, we can see that this sign is in violet, is denoting that temperature increases and heat waves is a general picture across all the continent. Another factor that is characterizing is that in some area, like in the Andes, here and here, we can see some cold spells and frost with less frequency, and we can see also increases in dryness and aridity, typically occurring in this area and in this area. Also increases soil poverty, the frequency of poverty. We can see also in this area with more heat waves and the combination of heat waves and with aridity may cause in many woodlands area of Brazil and central Argentina more frequency of wildfires. So, synthesizing the concepts, the more extremes are expected to occur, and the main characteristic that global warming is not only characterized by the increase in mean temperature, but mainly by warming during the nights. Less refreshment during the nights. This is another concept that is mainly known as urbanization of climate. There are low temperature, there are no temperature during the night, and this causes very strong consequence in many crops that need low temperature during the night. Typically in Brazil, Colombia, coffee plantations are suffering a very big crisis with very important attacks of rust, the rust of coffee, for example. Droughts and heat waves, wildfires, the extreme of heavy rainfalls and floods, typically during Niño periods, are characterized by very heavy rainfalls that cause many floods in South America and northern Brazil, in many plain areas. So, these changes that occur are projected to persist in the next years, in the next decade, according to different climate scenarios. We can see that in general terms, violet colors are prevailing, showing you that main temperature, that global warming, aridity in this area, and typically aridity in this part of the continent and heavy rainfalls in this part are projected to persist at least in this century. So, which are the impacts to take and to adopt different adaptation measures? According to the IPCC study, I participated in the fifth assessment of this study. The main risks affronted by these changes, the main risks are composed by the confluence of three factors: the hazards, the exposure to this risk, and the vulnerability. And these impacts are mainly causing, mainly climate change causing by, it's very difficult to distinguish the natural variability of climate from the anthropogenic climate change. It's very difficult to distinguish. In general terms, many people say that where heavy rain, it's climate change. No, the main driving factor of climate in South America is the ELSO oscillation from the Pacific, causing the Niño-Niña oscillation, where in our part of the continent, the Niño years are characterized by heavy rains, and typically more influence of typically floods in many parts of the continent, and the Niña periods are characterized by low rains and droughts in many parts of the continent, as occurred in Argentina in the last 3 years, typically. So, it's very difficult to distinguish between natural variability, typically caused by the ELSO oscillation, and anthropogenic climate change that is typically analyzed in terms of decades and not in year, what happened in this typical year. And the other factor that are affecting this are the socioeconomic processes, socioeconomic pathways that are facilitating the adaptation and mitigation options. And another factor important in our region is the governance of our natural resources, where the main factor in our area is not necessarily the lack of laws and regulation, but the real accomplishment of these laws. This is the real problem. So, we can see that the main risks in our area typically are carbon climate changes, heat stresses in crop and animals, water stresses in crops and first in livestock, crop and soil losses due to erosion during heavy rainfalls, causing floods and droughts in dry periods, of course, and the increase of incidence on pests and diseases, typically caused by the increases of temperature during the nights. And the vulnerabilities that are aggravating these risks are typically linked to the population and the ecosystem exposed to damage. Typically in the area in South America, the main risk is the important proportion of poverty people. Land use changes that are causing the loss of annual crops from land use changes from woodlands and forests and grassland and pasture converted to annual crops. Farming, the expansion of agricultural frontier from farming of climate or geographically vulnerable areas, and as I said recently, the lack of regulation or regulatory framework are effective compliance with the law. However, these risks and vulnerability, we have also interesting opportunities. The increasing temperatures are possibilitating that we can plant some megathermic species. Typically, that our expansion of livestock in Argentina, for example, is at the expense of sowing and megathermic grass that's gotten panic in the north, for example. The less frequency of frost is possibilitating this planting megathermic grasses. We are also planting megathermic grasses in the Pampas region to control, for example, soil salinization and topsoil solidification in the Pampas. For example, we are sowing panicum and I forgot, setaria, ¿cómo se dice? Setaria Grama Rhodes, Rhodes grass. Okay. And advances in agriculture and livestock to areas with more rainfall. This is another problem. This causes, for example, in the Pampa, the expansion of agricultural area. But, for example, in 1990, we only cropped 18 million hectares, and now we are cropping 37 million hectares. This expansion of the agricultural area works at the expenses of more rainfall at the west, but the disappearance of grassland in the south, about 10 to 12 million hectares of pastures and grassland disappear to crop soybean, for example, and in the north, about 4 to 5 million hectares of forest disappear in the north by deforestation. This process of deforestation is stopped in the beginning of this century and now is regulated by the law. So, this combination of risks, opportunities, and vulnerabilities possibilitate the adaptation of measures to climate change. The possibility of taking adaptation measures of climate change in South America is mainly affected or dependent on the type of agriculture. Unlike the presentation of Jose, that typically presented one type of agriculture, typically the Pampas area, this is kind of agriculture that's characterized, we can call it the agribusiness model. Typically, it's a market-driven agriculture, mainly connected with the markets, international markets. This typically is characterized by crop and livestock in the Pampas and the Brazilian campos. But not also this, the oil palm plantation and coffee plantation in the tropical South America, in Colombia, in Brazil, equator, Peru. Sugarcane cropping in tropical and subtropical South America. In the Andes area, vineyards, floriculture, fruits, and the main new in the continent are bioenergy crops, not only biodiesel soybean, but also soybean cellulose with sugarcane and other crops, and dairy, pigs, and poultry. This kind of agriculture coexists with another kind of agriculture in South America. We can... Hará un poco de agua. Si tengo la boca así. Disculpame. Sorry, a glass of water. So we can call this as a smallholder model and Andean agriculture. A smallholder model is typically with peasant family, vegetables, and in urban belts. Gracias. Thanks. Vegetables in urban belts, self-consumption farms, small coffee and cacao plantation in tropical South America, small vineyard and fruit plantation. And this is coexists in the Andes mountain range with a typical Andean agriculture, typically with organic agriculture, typically with over 150,000 hectares. Affecting now in all the Andes is 500,000 people. There are specific crops of the Andes that with a high demand in the markets, like quinoa, amaranth, chia, original maize. The Andes are the original place of different important crops now, like maize, like potato varieties. And there are important ancient indigenous knowledge that have very high demand for crop management and irrigation. So we can see different photos. One photo taken from different travels to the Caribbean. The Caribbean is not South America exactly, but one of the main problems we can see here, banana plantation. One of the main problems of banana plantation are land use changes in hill slopes with very important land use changes and landsliding with different important processes for catastrophes different. We can see landsliding and disaster after heavy storms, for example. We can see in the Andes recent harvest of arrurus, Maranta arundinacea, that is cropped for starch, for example, in Andean agriculture. Coffee plantations in Colombia. This is coexists are different with a market-driven plantation, typically soybean. Soybean management and no-till farming in Argentina campus are described recently by Jose. We can see another typically crop in South America is cocoa plantation for chocolate. This is typically from tropical areas. And we can see this in the Andes area, another kind of livestock and land use and different terracing in the Andes area to control soil erosion with the native Indian measures. Here we can see we can see here control cropping against soil erosion and landslide in the Andes area. So, which are the main effects of this? This is a study that we made with a group with the main impacts and adaptation measures in the continent. We can see that the main effects, the main changes were the risks of thermal stress crops. This is the main factor affected by climate change. The risk of thermal stress of crops and animals due to rising on average minimum daily temperature, less night cooling and refreshment, and heat waves. They are accompanied by shorter and warmer winters and fewer days and frost. This is mainly affecting the coast of the Atlantic, the northeast Brazil, and the Brazilian and Cerrado area, and also Central America. Another important climate change was the risk of water stress in crops and first in livestock. The decrease in rainfall that increased continuous days without rains. Severe droughts affect added but to competition with other uses that producing restriction and availability of water for irrigation and drinking by animals. This is typically affecting northeast Brazil, the Ceará region, and our region, all of the southern top of the southern continent, including our Patagonia. The risk of crop and soil losses due to erosion and flooding, extreme storm and flooding events, often also associated with land uses that can affect crops and can cause soil losses by avalanches, flooding and salinization, typically affecting those areas with the highest loads, all the Andes, all the Caribbean we have very hilly relief, hilly landscapes, and this area of the coast of Brazil that is affected by heavy rains and flooding. And finally, the risk of water depletion for irrigation due to decreases rainfall is not typically affecting the Central Andes area, Chile, Peru, and Ecuador, with the severe droughts that are affected in the last years. And the risk of flows and rivers in Andes and mountain areas due to decreases in liquid and snowy rainfall. There are lower amount of snow in the Andes and lower amount of water available for irrigation, all in the Andes. In Chile and Peru are highly worried about this now. So, one of the main factors affecting the world continent is the increase of global warming on the increase of mean temperature, typically during the night. Which are the main effects? This is a picture from the IPCC that where are the climatic threshold and why they are important. Probably this is highly, very well known by all of this group. We have, this is the increase in daily maximum temperature, and we have an optimal growth of temperature range, and a range of reduced growth, and a range of higher increases of temperature with crop failures because of limiting temperature thresholds. This is a review of the IPCC, the last IPCC assessment, that we can see here the average percentage change of crop growth duration in the 2015-2019 period. The crop growth duration refers to the time taken in year for crops to accumulate the reference period. The reference period taken was 1981 to 2010. Average growing season accumulated temperature. This, as the temperature rise, the average temperature is reached earlier, so with higher negative change. The crops enter too quickly and thus year decrease are lower. So we can see that in the general picture, from winter wheat, spring wheat, rice, maize, and soybean in Central America, Northwest South America, Northern South America monsoon area is the central area of South America, mainly taking the Amazonian area. In Northeastern South America, Southeastern South America, all the areas are negative values, showing that there were decreases in all the crops that were very important in winter wheat, almost 5%, for example, 5% in South America monsoon area. In spring wheat, there was no crop in where there were no effects. There were a very important threat reviewed by the IPCC study, the recent IPCC study, showing crop yield decreases in all South America in general. This is a literature review. So, what are other observed changes? There are less night refreshment that causes land use changes in coffee plantation. This is causing a very important change that people cropping coffee is searching from higher latitudes, showing that higher refreshment and abiding coffee roast area. So this is causing important land use changes and more erosion, for example. There are lots of snow and thawing in Andes mountains that causes farm abandonment in Chile and Peru. Less watering for livestock that increases poverty in northeastern Brazil. This is it's a very complicated area of Brazil, the northeast. This is a part of Brazil entering into the Atlantic Ocean. There are higher temperatures than a low warm season species, crop and livestock, and there are loss of woodland and forest because of fire during heat waves and droughts. Which are the main adaptation measurements that are taken? Adaptation measurements can be classified as the different kinds. We can take autonomous or planified adaptation measurements. Autonomous are taken by the farmers by themselves, and planified typically are taken typically by the government, but not only by the governments, also by different organizations like cooperatives, for example. And we can take also adaptation options of different origin. They can be structural or physical, social adaptation measurements, or institutional adaptation measurements. Can see, typically structural or physical adaptation measurements are classified those from engineering construction of the environment. Typically, for example, water storage and pumping, irrigation system, drainage system. We are constructing the environment here. Another are ecosystem-based adaptation measurements that are also known as nature-based solutions. For example, increases biodiversity, afforestation and reforestation, assisted migration of the species, trees foreshadowing, reduction of fires and prescriptive fires, construction of biological corridors, seed banks, land adaptive management. Those technological adaptation measurements typically are new varieties and types of varieties and crops of animals, genetical techniques, the traditional methods, efficient irrigation methods, water-saving technologies, and those mapping technologies for risk monitoring. We have also social measurements that are information systems, typically risk and vulnerability maps, early warning system, for example, for frost, or for temperature, or for heavy rains, for early warning and response, monitoring biosensors, the behavioral systems like soil and water conservation, change of light practices, change of crops, change of system and planting dates. This is typically, sometimes it's autonomous measurements, silvopastoral options, and by the end, institutional economics measurements like the payment for ecosystem services, incentives and drought relief, laws and regulation, land zoning laws, water agreement and regulation, property rights and security on plant tenure, protecting area, and policies and governance practices like zonification of disaster rare zones, including integrated water, basin and landscape management, ecosystem-based management, sustainable forest management, and community-based adaptation. So we can see here a study that we performed in a study for South America, and we can see that from all of these different kinds of adaptation measurements, the more frequent taken in South America was crop and livestock management in the study. This is a review study. Irrigation management is another. The adoption of new crop varieties and livestock types here, integrated system, integrated forest and silvopastoral system, the disaster prevention that including the use of radars and meteorological information systems like those imposed by INTA, our meteorological service, for example, different governance adaptation measurements, typically the law for protection of our forests and woodlands, for example. The diversification is another important adaptation measurement. For example, that was shown by Jose, showing that more intensified crop rotation is a typical adaptation measurement that imposes more diversified system with different crops and not only one kind of crops by the use, for example, of cover crops. For example, territorial ordering, local and indigenous knowledge, and different kind. And we can see here one that is not more, we have no important frequency, but it's very, very important. CSA, climate smart agriculture. Climate smart agriculture is a very interesting compo that trying to more climate resilient systems, that with more diversified systems, with a more resistant to climate change and different kind of extremes. So we can see that all of this, because which is the interaction of this kind of adaptation option with the mitigation, prevention of land degradation, ecosystem of biodiversity protection, food security, health, poverty reduction, and water. We can see that only soil and water conservation, monitoring of early warning system for extreme events have green colors that are all, this is also win-win, and there are only co-benefits or with mitigation, prevention, and land degradation, and so on. And many of these adaptation options, typically water storage and pumping, have red color with mitigation of climate change, prevention of land degradation. We can, if you use water storage, we are taking water from groundwater, for example. We can make cost of soil salinization, for example. Changes in animal and plant production area are very important for food security and health, but are caused by land degradation because of land use changes that are producing land recovery. So we can have to take into account that which kind of adaptation measures are taking, and with the interaction with the different, with mitigation, prevention of land degradation, ecosystem and biodiversity protection, food security, health, and so on. So different photos, we can see coffee plantation in the midst in Colombia. These are typically plantation in tropical America. This is a photo taken by mine in Galapagos. We can see production of vegetation in rainforest, the combination with rainforest and coffee plantation. This is a banana plantation also in rainforest. And we can see also typically Indian agriculture in the Peruvian Andes, maize agriculture and different kind of products like amaranth and chia. And we can see here, this is the typical adaptation measurements in our pampas, the adoption of precision agriculture with management in different environments that distinguish the soil in soil types and land units. These are very, very important mitigation adaptation measurements in our pampas. So, and silvopastoral management in the Argentinian Chaco. This is another important ecosystem basin solution that we're taking in the north of our country. So, which are the future scenarios? In Central and South America, we continue as main food producer in the next decade with high pressure on natural resources. And in those highly technified market-driven agriculture subjected to surveillance, the main change or projected change is that these changes were subjected to surveillance and traceability of processes, traceability of how we are cropping. Greater development of climate-smart agriculture, typically with smallholder and Andean agriculture, with protected destination of origin stamps. These are very important change now. And poverty and social inequality are likely to persist as main threats in the continent, regrettably. So, thank you for your attention. I wait for your questions.
Miguel, we mentioned that different extreme events are expected, and it is also expected a change in the crops that we produce here in the pampas.
Yeah. Extremes in the pampas are mainly carried by the Niño-Niño oscillation. Mainly, this is the main factor, and it's not attributable to climate change. This is the natural variability of climate. So these extremes are highly known. Typically, we have in Niño periods with excess of rainfall, with typically floods in the plains, and the droughts that we are suffering in the last 3 years in Niño periods. Probably not extremes, but climate change that is attributable to climate change is the increase in mean temperature during the night, the lower temperature. Typically, this is attributable to climate change because it's closely linked to higher greenhouse emissions. But greenhouse emissions are not attributable only to South America, but are global. And another change that I expected, not in the Pampas, but in the west, is less snow and irrigation water in irrigation area in the Andes. These are close, severely affecting vineyards and orchards in the Andes, and it's more affecting the west part of the Andes with Chile and Peru, where we are seeing now land farm abandonment. But in the Pampas, no, this is my opinion, I think that the climate change or climate variability was not so bad as we typically think, that we allow to expand the agricultural area to the west because we have more rain in the west and more rain in the northwest, I think. Sorry. Another extreme is that the combination of heat waves and severe droughts, typically during winter in the our monsoon area, is increasing fires and the loss of woodland. Typically in our dry Chaco area in the central part of Argentina, this is a very, very severe factor.
And do you know if it is forecast an increase in the occurrence of the Niño or Niña events?
Sorry?
An increase in the occurrence in the probability of Niño or Niña events in the future?
Or the frequency,
yeah,
the frequency of the difference of phases.
I will speak you of simulating that I know about the and so science is not laboratory, but Niña events are caused by the oscillation in the temperature of the Pacific. Well, the Pacific area typically, this is closely linked with the Humboldt, with the Humboldt is a cold, with the Humboldt spring in the sea, approach to the continent, the temperature of the sea decreases, and this causes monsonic area in the continent with rise, with droughts. On the contrary, when the Humboldt stream is not close to the continent, the temperature of the sea increases, and so this causes a lot of vapor in the atmosphere, and this is generates an anti-monsoon area, and so this causes a lot of rains. But this is also in combination with what is happening in the Atlantic, where the Atlantic allows the arrival of the anti-monsoon area with rains to the continent. For example, in this year was very typical because our droughts, our Niña, in the last months, but in Brazil there was very, very heavy rainfall because this is so because of the location of the monsoon of the anti-monsoon area in the Atlantic area. So, to resume, I think that it's not so clear which is the combination and interaction between this climate variability imposed by the seas. The Pacific is not the only factor in the world. There are another in the Indic, other in the Atlantic,
but those are more affecting our area is that of the Pacific. And it's not very clear what is the interaction of it with the greenhouse emissions and climate change. But probably the more strong relation is what is happening with land cover. Yeah, and it's very difficult to distinguish that factor caused by land covering because of the changing color of the albedo, the color of the surface, or the generation of vapor, water vapor, because of the presence of vegetation. If we make land clearing in the north or in the Amazonian area and the trees disappear, there are very important decrease. All the solar radiation reaches the land, and there are higher temperatures in the atmosphere and less water vapor, so rains are decreasing. And also, this is also affected by the change in soil color. I think that this change in land clearing is a very strong, it's a stronger factor that are occurring in the Pacific and so on. Very complex.
I would like to ask Malcolm and Sam, what happened in UK in terms of the climate change? Because as Miguel said, one of the most predictable parameters is the increase of temperature, night temperature, which change the duration of the cycles, at least in the winter crops, probably also in the summer crops. But what happened there in UK? It's
Yes,
with the expectation.
The modelling, as far as I understand, is that with the increased temperatures, exactly as you say, you affect technology, you increase the speed of crop development, which can bring the development on periods where it can be more susceptible to extreme events. You know, if there is a very late frost, for example, and the crop is more advanced. So these can be very specific effects, decreases. There may also be decreases in yields, but when you include the increased CO2 concentration as well as the temperature effects, they kind of balance each other out, at least for the next 30 or 40 years. Beyond that, I don't know what the future really holds. But there are balances. But the key thing is the increased temperatures will affect the developmental times, and you could have some catastrophic losses for too early development, for example. That's the way I see it. And of course, the other key factor for all of the climate change is that it does unbalance the weather patterns substantially, particularly because of the Atlantic in the UK and the Gulf Stream and the air currents, so that we get more extreme weather events. Certainly, we see lots more extreme weather events. That can be high rainfall at certain periods of the year. I mean, through the year we have typical rainfall, and everybody says, "Oh yeah, the UK is really wet. We've got no problem about water." But actually, we can have large periods in the spring when there is little rainfall, and this can be detrimental. And this seems to be more common now than it used to be. And then you can have large amounts of rainfall at specific periods. And this is also more common. And this can also have very negative effects in both in terms of the mechanics of farming, putting machines into the fields, but also in quality aspects if the grain is too wet at the harvest time. So currently what we see, the current effects of climate change, are these extreme events having more negative effects, and being more and more challenging to deal with in terms of croppers. Then the longer term effects, you have to bring in both temperature and CO2, which can balance each other out for yield if you haven't got these other effects. Sam, whether you want to add to that?
Yeah, I generally agree with that. I think that the difficulties will tend to be for individual farmers in terms of how they do things and whether there is rainfall that week or that month where something needs to happen. One thing that's mentioned a lot in Lancaster with people looking at flows of nutrients is that our rainfall patterns tend to become more biased towards winter rainfall, which will mean that we'll potentially have higher leaching phosphates particularly. So farmers will have to think about nutrient management because we're quite tightly regulated. So other requirements from them can go where when we get into the system and run out of the system.
Because high winter rainfall is one of the good things.
Yeah.
Because it gives a lot of water into the soil.
So long as it's
So if we have a dry spring, there's usually enough water available to take through any drought period.
As long as it doesn't affect the cultivation, which is critical. If you can't get the crop in autumn, can't get it in the spring, then that high winter rainfall doesn't help.
Another effect of the dry periods in the spring is that we always apply fertilizer in the spring. It's not applied at sowing, it's always applied on dressing. And if it's dry, then because we apply dry fertilizer, actually sometimes uptake is quite difficult at key growing periods. So though the good fertilizer are expensive fertilizer, lots of it, the crop doesn't make efficient use of it to generate cattle if there's a long dry spell. And that has caused a couple of times in recent years decreases in national yields.
In spring is related with the beginning of stem elevation in terms of technology in the crops?
Sorry, beginning of
stem elevation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably, I think that in general terms, climate scenarios and climate extremes were more severe in the northern hemisphere than in our hemisphere. But in the north, we can see the decrease in glaciers and the increase in sea levels and so on. This is causing, I don't know which region, but I stayed in Denmark, and Denmark they are very, very worried about the sea level increase. We have constructed defenses in the coast to avoid flooding by the sea. It's very, but all Denmark is very, 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 very plain. But going to our continent again, I think that the main factor in our continent is global warming and the increase of temperature during the night. And this is now causing very important changes, typically not only with wheat in our and tree plantation in our Patagonia that need low temperature and frost during the winter, but also in the north of the continent with coffee plantation and cacao plantation that are tropical crops with no frost, but they need night refreshment and they have no night refreshment. And the farmers are looking for higher altitudes, looking for higher, lower temperatures during the night. They are causing land clearing a lot of problems in the land. This is a very big problem. On the contrary, changes in precipitation are not generalized in South America, but are typically located, for example, with decreases in northern Brazil, it's a dry area, decreases in the Andes typically, and in our Pampas and the Chaco, that depends on the year, is more related with the Niña oscillation terms, and there are more frequencies of typically of heat waves and droughts.
But maybe the winter is going to be drier in Córdoba.
Yeah.
So the dry season,
Okay.
the winter and beginning of spring, is going to be longer also here. So it's pretty.
Especially in the last 3 years.
Well, but this was the Niña, it says that the time without rainfall is going to increase in Córdoba, for example.
Yeah, but the problem is that precipitation is more difficult and it's more unpredictable to see what happens in the future.
Yeah.
But temperature, you see, it is more, it has certain that will increase, especially the night temperature. I think we work with Roman in this topic, and here in Argentina, at least in the winter crops, you reduce from 6 to 7% per each degree of increase in night temperature in terms of yield. Our expectation is that the farmers change the sowing dates in the next years to put the sowing earlier than now and try to compensate the increase of temperature. But the problem is that the frost occurrence is not in the same way that the increase of night temperature. And the proportion of the exposition or the risk of frost is more difficult to predict into the climate change. You can predict the increase of temperature and what happened with the yield, but the problem is what happened with the frost risk if you put the sowing date earlier than now.
Yeah. And this year we have severe problem of frost, and because we have a great change of temperature, and you don't have the plant has no time to make accumulation. So we have a great impact of temperature.
We had a frost in February. We had a frost in February this year.
Yes.
But
in the same week, in some places we have frost and heat stress. In the same week.
Yes.
Yeah.
Abhishek, for example.
I think in February.
But in my opinion, sorry. In my opinion, I think that there are probably not only less frequency of frost in general, but more frequency of early frost and late frost. And I think this is not well studied, in my opinion.
There is data showing that trend. There is data.
I don't know. In my opinion.
There is a work by the one long that shows how it changed the last frost, and it says that in some locations the last frost is earlier, but in another it's not this early. So when the farmers start to sow earlier, the risk of frost is not. It's increasing because the last frost is not moving.
But this is what
we have less number of days with frost, but it's not moving the days.
So these problems you talk about now, is that due to the superposition of the vineyard and on top of the climate change?
No.
It's just due to the climate change.
Yes.
Yeah, because for example in the southwest, minimum temperature decreased in the last 10 years, not increased. This is a particular region in the southwest, but normally the minimum temperature increase in the
Daniel, southwest of Pampas or?
Yes, it's This is a triangle, a typical triangle where the minimum temperature.
We are working on actualization of the Maria Fernandez long data.
Okay.
We are now in the process of the data, but probably the tendency is the same. In some parts of the Pampas, the night temperature increase, and the frost have different behaviors. But the problem is the days before the frost. In these particular days, probably 1 week before the frost, the days are warmer. And after that, start the frost.
Yeah.
The damage of the crop is completely different in one scenario or in another.
This year we have this problem.
The question is how to take prevention to this.
Yeah, so the solution people are here is obviously free crops which can survive and be more tolerant. So does the commercial breeding, I don't know, here in Argentina, is it breeding commercial or is it? Yeah. So are they taking on these challenges to breed crops which have got greater resistance to
But this
there needs more push from you guys.
There is no genetic variation for tolerance to
No.
There's always genetic variation.
This year, all the farmers are speaking about Paget 620, who has a great impact of the crops this year. But
There may not be a genetic variation available to the farmers, but it's there somewhere.
well, I don't know. This is what very that but they are not. Well, maybe he's working on cross tolerance. I don't know if he.
No, during the summer innovation or during the heating, the innovation is very difficult.
Yeah.
There are a lot of works trying to link different morphological structures in the spike, different luminous thickness or something like that, in association with the cross tolerance, but the results are very valuable.
Maybe you have to go back to the wild relatives.
Difference, for example, in maize, difference among cultivars are always linked to phenology.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
Few days occurs the stress and one flowering before, after, and this is the difference.
To look at these extreme distances, tolerances, it's going to be difficult to find variation. But it could be there, but it's not obviously amongst current commercial germplasm, because most of the current commercial germplasm is selected over a long period of time in current conditions. So it is a big challenge, because the other completely different way of looking at it is you should change crops. So growing wheat altogether. No, no. And you import all your wheat from somewhere else.
Yeah, I think this is the most challenge around the world. We're trying to introduce tolerance to frost during flowering or during heating.
But it's our challenge, it's a challenge.
Yes.
To be looking for solutions.
Because the same genes that promote tolerance during the vegetative period doesn't work at flowering time. This is a problem. We have many, not many, but different commercial genotypes that tolerate very well the frost during the vegetative period, but doesn't work in heading or flowering.
Tolerate with acclimation.
Yes. Yes, with acclimation is better, but without acclimation, the variety 50 more or less function.
How much do your varieties fill in if there is a frost time? And can they come again in terms of the flowering? Are there additional tillers in the background that might not be susceptible? Or are you using varieties that basically everything happens at once? Very consistent?
But you are thinking about frost in the tillering period.
I'm asking the question because we're doing work with some beans in the heat. We're exposing them to heat stress. And then that doesn't have much impact on what we did at the end, because you might kill the flowers during the heat stress, but the plant continues to generate because it's not developing in a sharp way. It continues to develop more flowers later.
Yes, depending on, because if the frost occurs at the beginning of the tillering, there are no problem, you can recover it perfectly. But the frost occurs at the, for example, beginning of stem elevation, you have a problem because you have no time to recover the tiller that you do during the frost period.
Presumably, if you have those tillers with more spread through time, you get a less uniform crop and decrease yield.
You may have that with the intermediate long cultivars, but not with the short.
This year was hot during the winter, and for those long genotypes, the polarization requirements was difficult for them to cover those requirements. And the reason was a heterogeneous technology, heterogeneous flowering. The frost hit them. So it was not the same impact over the main stem that on the tubes. Difference.
This is lunchtime.
Okay.
The discussion, but
I don't know, or I imagine, I don't know, that the more frequency of frost in the southeast Buenos Aires province is a dry area during winter. This is very near the sierras, the Pampas sierras, ranges. Probably the lower amount of humidity in the atmosphere may be linked to the more frequency of frost. I don't know, but I think that some climatologists have to study this. I think.
Yeah.
I think.
I don't know from the climatological point of view what happened with
But in the southeast or in the north of the Pampas, Pergamino, we have higher humidity in the air.
Yes.
So the frosts are less probably, I suppose. I suppose the frosts are closely combined with low humidity in the air. I think. I suppose.
I think it's worse. When the frost occurs with the low humidity in the environment, it's worse.
Yeah.
In the environment and the soil, it's worse, like this year.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel.
Todo el ambiente de zona, superado